I didn't expect my marriage to feel like a courtroom exhibit the night I walked into the kitchen. There it was, a laminated sheet of paper sitting right next to my dinner plate. Big bold letters screamed across the top. 20 new rules for a better marriage. For a split second, I thought it was some kind of joke. I even let out a laugh and said, "All right, who died and made you the sheriff of marriage?" But my wife Claire wasn't laughing. She stood near the fridge with her arms crossed, looking at me the way a strict principal looks at a kid caught cheating on a test. Her eyes weren't playful. They weren't even frustrated. They were cold, calculated, like she had rehearsed this moment. I picked up the sheet, still half expecting her to smirk and say she was kidding. Instead, she said, flat and serious, "Jason, I think it's time we bring some structure into this marriage. These rules will help us align better." That word align hit me like a bad corporate memo. She wasn't talking like a wife anymore. She was talking like a manager addressing an employee. We weren't two people who had built 9 years together. Suddenly, we were satellites in need of realignment. My heart thudded harder the deeper I scanned down her list. Rule 1. Share location with Claire 24/7s. Rule 2. Purchases over $50 must be approved. Rule 3. Provide detailed plans before leaving the house. Rule 4. Hourly check-ins when out with friends. Rule 5. All messages from outside contacts must be shared if requested. Rule 6. All disagreements to be resolved through written reflection, not argument. And those were just the first few. The rest read like a micromanaging manifesto, a checklist for how to monitor, correct, and document me. It felt less like marriage and more like probation. I looked up at her, gripping that laminated monstrosity, and asked, "Are you serious right now?" Her lips pressed into a straight line. "Completely serious. I've spoken with people who use similar systems, and it saved their marriages. This is for us. For us." I laughed again, but this time there was no humor in it. "No, Claire. This looks like it's for one of us. Just one." She didn't flinch. She just walked past me, picked up her wine glass, and said in a cool, measured voice, "Don't overreact. This is just setting expectations. Clarity is healthy." And as I stared at her, really stared, I realized this wasn't the woman I married. The Claire I fell in love with used to laugh at my dumb jokes, dance barefoot in the kitchen, and once told me she loved me because I made her feel free. This Claire, she was handing me laminated laws like a warden issuing orders to an inmate. I wanted to yell. I wanted to tear that paper up in front of her. But instead, I set it down, forced my voice calm, and said, "I need some time to think about this." Her answer was instant, robotic, rehearsed. "There's nothing to think about, Jason. These rules go into effect immediately." And that was the moment I knew this wasn't about saving us. This was about control. Look, I'm no caveman. I wasn't demanding intimacy on a timer or treating marriage like a contract with fine print. But when your wife looks you in the eye and basically tells you that physical closeness is off the table indefinitely, you start to wonder if you're really her partner or just a roommate paying half the bills. I tried to explain it as gently as I could. "Claire, this isn't about sex. It's about us, about connection, about actually feeling like we're still a couple." She sighed loud, exaggerated, like I'd just asked her to solve an impossible math equation. "Jason, we're fine. You just overthink everything." Spoiler alert, we were not fine. Over the next few months, I bent over backwards, trying to make it work. I planned date nights. I cooked her favorite meals. I even folding laundry, and trust me, I hate folding laundry with the passion of 1,000 burning suns. And how did she respond? Every single time, I got the same thing. A polite little thanks, followed by a quick peck on the cheek. The kind of kiss you'd give a coworker who stayed late to finish a project, not the man you once swore you couldn't live without. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. Stress, Work, something temporary. But deep down, I already knew. One night, I decided to bring up therapy. Maybe a counselor could help us find our way back to each other. Her reaction? She laughed. Not the warm, playful kind of laugh I used to love. No, it was sharp, dismissive, almost cruel. Jason, therapy isn't going to magically make me want you more. That hit me like a gut punch. But stubborn as I am, I went ahead and booked a session anyway, hoping she might change her mind. She didn't. When I told her about the appointment, she just rolled her eyes. Why can't you just accept that this is how I am now? Marriage isn't all about sex, you know. And that's when it finally sank in. Claire wasn't going to change. Maybe I shouldn't have to beg my own wife to care. Maybe no one should. That night, something inside me shifted, like a switch flipping off. I realized I was done pleading, done chasing scraps of affection like some salesman trying to pitch intimacy in his own home. I wasn't going to do it anymore. So instead of chasing after something that was never coming back, I turned my focus inward. I started hitting the gym again, not to impress her, but to remind myself I was still alive inside this body. I reconnected with a couple of old buddies, the kind of friends who don't care if you show up with messy hair and a tired face. And in the quiet evenings, I dusted off my old tools and got back into woodworking, shaping something real with my own two hands. But the more I pulled my life together, the more her indifference stood out like a flashing neon sign. You're the problem, Jason. Some nights, I couldn't tell if I was losing my mind, or if Claire really just didn't give a damn anymore. And then came the curveball. Out of nowhere, she walked into the living room with a smile, the kind of smile people wear when they're about to drop big news. Jason, she said, sitting down across from me like she was about to pitch a business deal. I've been thinking, maybe we should start trying for kids. I almost dropped my coffee. Kids? Are you serious? Of course, she said, as if it was the most logical thing in the world. We're not getting any younger. It's the next natural step. Natural step? Logical? I just stared at her. Claire, we've been intimate twice this entire year. Twice. You think now is the time to bring a baby into this? Her smile faltered, but she forced it back into place. Well, maybe that's something we can work on. Oh, now she wanted to work on it. How convenient. I could feel my blood pressure climbing, so instead of exploding, I walked out of the room before I said something I'd regret. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying her words. Kids weren't just a logical step. They were a lifetime commitment. And the idea of raising a child in a marriage where one partner was already emotionally gone, that wasn't just depressing, it was terrifying. By the time the sun came up, my decision was made. I called a lawyer. By the end of the week, the divorce papers were ready and sitting in a neat stack on my desk. No threats, no bluffs, just a clear plan forward. On Monday, I handed them to her. Jason, what the hell is this? She asked, holding the papers like they were about to burst into flames. It's a divorce petition, I said calmly, my voice steady. I've thought this through, and I believe it's what's best for both of us. Her eyes went wide, like she couldn't believe I was actually serious. You're not really going through with this, are you? Dead serious, I said. For the first time in years, Claire had nothing clever to throw back at me. She just sat there in silence, staring at the papers in her hands. Over the next few days, Claire went from stunned silence to full-blown hysteria. There were tears, shouting matches, guilt trips, heavy enough to crush a truck. At one point, she looked at me with red, watery eyes and whispered, I thought you loved me. I do, I told her, but love isn't enough if I'm the only one putting in the effort. That same night, I started packing. I was determined to get out before the cycle dragged me back in. And that's when the real Claire showed up. I was boxing up my books when she appeared in the doorway wearing lingerie I'd never seen before, the kind you'd expect in a glossy catalog, not on a Tuesday night. She even had props. Jason, she purred, leaning on the frame, maybe we could give this another shot. I'll admit, for a split second, I froze. A tiny part of me thought, maybe she finally gets it. Maybe she's realizing what's at stake. But then reality hit like ice water down my back. Where was this effort the past 2 years? And why did it take divorce papers for her to suddenly remember how to try? "Sorry, Claire," I said, stepping past her. "You're too late." Her jaw dropped. "You're really going to throw this all away?" "No," I said, turning to face her. "You already did." After that night, Claire went into overdrive. First came the lingerie. Then the teary speeches about how we could fix this. And finally, my personal favorite, the guilt trips. "You're abandoning me," she sobbed one morning while I zipped the last duffel bag. "I gave you the best years of my life, Jason." I looked her straight in the eye. "Claire, you gave me just enough to keep me hanging on. Let's not rewrite history." Her tears dried up instantly, replaced by a cold, sharp glare. "Fine, leave. You'll regret this." Ah, there it was, the classic, "you'll never do better than me" speech. I just shrugged, threw the bag over my shoulder, and walked out. For the first time in years, I didn't look back. I spent the first few nights in a cheap hotel. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave me the breathing room I desperately needed. The first thing I did was lock everything down, changed all my passwords, checked every joint account, and made sure Claire couldn't touch a single cent she wasn't entitled to. My lawyer had been crystal clear. Keep things clean, keep things fair, but above all, keep things smart. A few days later, my sister called. "Come stay with me," she said. "I've got plenty of space. And honestly, it'll be good for you to be around family." By the weekend, I was back in my hometown, sleeping in her guest room, and trying to figure out my next steps. It felt surreal, the house Claire and I shared. The life we built, all of it was already in the rearview mirror. But of course, Claire wasn't done. Not by a long shot. First came the texts. "I miss you. Can we talk? I know I messed up. Please, just one more chance. This isn't who we are, Jason." I didn't respond. My lawyer had warned me to limit contact, and truthfully, I had zero desire to get pulled back into her web. Then came the voicemails. "Jason, please, I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Just come home." Home. That house hadn't felt like home in years. About a week later, Claire's attempts to pull me back hit a new low. I was sitting in the living room with my sister, catching up, when my phone buzzed. It was a photo from Claire. I hesitated before opening it, but when I finally did, my jaw nearly hit the floor. There she was, dressed in lingerie I'd never seen before, holding a bottle of champagne. The caption read, "Let's celebrate a fresh start." My sister leaned over, caught a glimpse of the screen, and burst out laughing. "Wow, she's really pulling out all the stops, huh?" "Yeah," I muttered, deleting the photo. "Persistent, I'll give her that." By the end of the month, I had moved into my own place, a small apartment. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and my thoughts. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I started focusing on work, reconnecting with old friends, and figuring out who I was without Claire hanging over my shoulder. One night, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled on a fresh post from Claire. She was out with her friends, smiling wide, holding a drink like the past never existed. The caption read, "Here's to new chapters." I almost laughed out loud. For a woman who once swore she couldn't breathe without me, she sure looked perfectly fine. But then again, appearances had always been her specialty. She could polish a lie until it shined like truth. I won't sugarcoat it. There were nights I felt the loneliness press down on me. Nights when I second-guessed my decision, wondering if I'd made a mistake by letting go. Moments when I questioned if I'd ever meet someone who truly understood me. But as the weeks passed, those feelings didn't grow louder. They faded. And in their place came something I hadn't felt in years: peace. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't living under someone else's shadow. I wasn't tiptoeing around rules, moods, or games. I was living for me on my own terms. The divorce process turned out smoother than I expected. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy. There were lawyers, endless forms, and those stiff, awkward meetings where Claire tried to play the victim. It drained me, but at least it never got ugly. She wanted the house. Honestly, I didn't care. Those walls carried more ghosts than memories I wanted to keep. The deal was simple. She'd pay me half its value over the next 5 years. My lawyer locked the term so tight, there was no wiggle room, no late payments, no excuses. Claire pushed back, of course, but I didn't budge. The rest, our accounts, furniture, little things got split down the middle. When the ink dried, I walked out of that office feeling like I had just set down a 100-pound weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying. For the first time in almost a decade, I could breathe without asking permission. About 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I finally felt like I was settling into my new rhythm. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from my old buddy Mark. We'd known each other for years, and though he wasn't usually the type to gossip, I could hear the grin in his voice. "Dude, you're not gonna believe who Claire's dating now." I sighed. Do I even want to know? "Oh, trust me, you'll want to hear this." Turns out the guy's name was Tyler. Curious, I checked her social media and found a photo Claire standing in front of the house, smiling next to him like they'd just won the lottery. Tyler wore a tacky tank top with "Hustle Hard" printed across the chest. His tattoos looked like they'd been sketched during detention by a bored high schooler. I couldn't help it. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my phone. Later that week, Mark filled in the details. Tyler called himself a serial entrepreneur, which was code for selling cheap knockoff energy drinks out of his trunk while claiming to be an influencer with barely 500 followers. He'd already been married twice and had a reputation for bouncing between girlfriends' couches when money ran out. "Oh, and by the way," Mark added, chuckling, "he's living with her now." Classic Claire. At first, I thought I'd feel bitter or maybe jealous. But honestly, all I felt was relief. If that was her version of trading up, then I had just dodged the biggest bullet of my life. Still, I couldn't help but wonder how long it would take before Claire realized she had traded stability for, well, whatever Tyler was offering. Not that it mattered anymore. That wasn't my burden to carry. After the whirlwind of the divorce, and then the ridiculous comedy of hearing about Tyler, I decided I needed a break. Not just from unpacking boxes or catching up on work, but from everything. I wanted one night to breathe, to relax, maybe even meet people who didn't bring chaos into my life. That's how I ended up at this small craft beer bar downtown. The place was lively, without being overcrowded, just the right kind of atmosphere. Rows of taps lined the wall, each with quirky names like Apocalypse IPA, Highway to Hops, and Pineapple Express. I grabbed a seat at the bar, ordered a flight of their most interesting beers, and finally let my shoulders drop. For the first time in months, I felt the tension ease. I was halfway through a rich chocolate stout when she walked in. Short auburn hair, an easy smile, a leather jacket that gave off that confident but not arrogant vibe. She slid onto the stool right next to me, glanced at my flight of beers, and smirked. "Trying to drink the whole menu?" she teased. I chuckled and shook my head. "Just narrowing down my favorites. Got any recommendations?" She tilted her head thoughtfully, eyes sparkling. "Well, that depends. Are you a hops guy or more of a hide the alcohol with fruit guy?" "I'd like to think I'm versatile," I said, grinning. That got a genuine laugh out of her. "All right then, try the mango saison. Trust me." Her name was Madison, though she quickly added, "Everyone just calls me Maddie." We ended up talking for nearly an hour, jumping from topic to topic: travel, the strangest beers we'd ever tried, even the never-ending debate about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. She was firmly against it. I stayed neutral, not wanting to start a war over dinner toppings. There was something about her energy that felt refreshing. Lighthearted, confident, but never pushy. It was such a sharp contrast from the constant emotional tug-of-war I'd lived through before. When the bartender finally announced last call, I realized I didn't want the night to end. "Listen," I said, leaning forward just enough to catch her eye. "This has been a lot of fun. Would you want to grab dinner sometime? My treat." She smirked, playful but warm. "Bold move asking me out while I'm half a beer ahead of you. But, yeah, I'd like that." We exchanged numbers, and when I walked out of that bar, I caught myself smiling. Not the polite smile I'd been faking for months, but a real one. A few days later, Maddie and I met up again, this time at a little Italian place tucked on a corner downtown. The kind of spot that smelled like fresh bread and garlic the second you walked through the door. We ordered pasta and wine, and the conversation just flowed. She told me about her work in graphic design. I told her about picking up woodworking again, and somewhere in between, we ended up laughing over the story of how she once accidentally adopted a ferret. Eventually, the subject shifted, as it always does, to relationships. "So," Maddie said, swirling her glass, "what's your story? Any crazy exes?" I chuckled. "You have no idea." I gave her the short version, married young. Things fell apart, now just figuring out who I am again. She listened quietly, her eyes steady on mine. "And her? What was she like?" she asked. "Oh, you'll love this," I said, pulling out my phone. I showed her the photo Claire, standing in front of the house with her new guy. "That's her. And that's Tyler, the man she upgraded to." Maddie's eyes widened. Then she actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that carried more knowing than humor. "Wait, I know this guy." My eyebrows shot up. "You do?" "Yeah," she said, leaning back in her chair. "Travis used to hang out with a group of friends I know. He's a total mooch. But here's the kicker." She lowered her voice. "I saw him and your ex together, months ago, at a party, holding hands." I froze. "What do you mean, months ago?" "I mean," she said carefully, "way before you told me your divorce even started." And just like that, the puzzle pieces I hadn't even realized were missing started snapping into place.